Our State of the U.S. segment tonight. Liberals are pushing strict gun control after the deadly shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. But our next guest has a different solution. Congressman Thomas Massie has proposed a bill that would reduce the minimum age at which someone can legally purchase a handgun from 21 years old to 18 years old. This bill counters the liberal narrative that making it harder for law-abiding citizens to purchase a gun will somehow make us safer. With me now, Republican Congressman from the 4th District of Kentucky, Thomas Massie. Congressman Massie, thanks for joining me, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Liz.
All right, Congressman, the SAFER Act, that's what you've named it, the Second Amendment for Every Registrable Voter Act. Tell me about this.
Well, I think if you're old enough to vote, pick who the president is, old enough to die for your country and have to register for the draft, then you should be old enough to exercise all of your constitutional rights. Look, why should a 20-year-old mother be denied the right to defend herself? And that's what they're talking about. If they raise the age to buy a long gun to 21, the age to buy a handgun is already at 21. I think we should lower it to 18. And that's why I've introduced H.R. 5112. I think it's time to do this. You know, it went from 18 to 21 back in 1968, I think. But since then, we've had the Heller decision, which has affirmed that the Second Amendment applies to everybody.
Right. Do you believe it's unconstitutional for 18, 19, and 20-year-old law-abiding Americans not to be able to legally purchase a handgun?
It's absolutely unconstitutional, and there's no doubt in my mind if you raise the age to buy any gun to 21 that you have now completely extinguished somebody's right to keep and bear arms. And the Heller decision, they said, look, they didn't speak to the issue of whether you couldn't have gun control or not. They said that when the gun control becomes so oppressive that you've completely extinguished somebody's right to keep and bear arms, then it's unconstitutional. That's what would happen under these current proposals. And I think the fact that you have to be 21 to buy a handgun is already unconstitutional. In many states, you can get a concealed carry permit when you're 18. How are you going to acquire that gun, particularly if they close private transfers? Then nobody who's between the ages of 18 and 21 could get a handgun to exercise their constitutional right.
Right. Well, it seems to me that these ideas or these proposals, mostly coming from the left, President Trump has stated support at one time for them as well. But it seems to me these proposals are a lose-lose because in practicality, if you raise the age to 21 to be able to buy a long gun or a rifle, that's not going to stop mass shooters because the majority of mass shooters that use rifles are over 21 already. There's only been 2, I think, in the last 20 years who have been under 21, and one of those got the gun illegally. The other one should have been prohibited from getting it if law enforcement had done their job. So in the practical sense, I don't believe that that would stop the gun violence that they claim to want to fight. And I agree with you. I think the people that would suffer the most would be law-abiding citizens between 18, 19, 20, old enough to die for their country, who now are told that they are not responsible enough to own a firearm.
Liz, the liberals know that the gun control they're proposing wouldn't have stopped any of the shootings that have occurred. For instance, look at the Columbine shooting. They used straw purchasers to get their guns, the 2 did. They got a girl to buy them 3 long guns, and they got a guy who was over the age of 21 to buy them the handgun. Look at the case in Connecticut, the tragic case there. The son stole the guns from his mother, shot his mother, and went and committed the crime. Or look at the shooting we just had in Kentucky, at a school in Kentucky. The 15-year-old got a handgun by stealing it. Look, the laws that they've proposed, whether it's expanded background checks, whether it's closing private sales from one individual to another, whether it's raising the age, it wouldn't have stopped any of these shootings. We need to get serious. What we need to do is allow the teachers to be armed like they are in 12 states already. That's why I've got another bill, H.R. 34, which I call the Safe Students Act, which would repeal the Federal Gun-Free School Zone Act.
Right, and that just makes sense to me because I think it's 98.4% of school shootings or mass shootings in our country have taken place in gun-free zones. It's literally like an invitation to serial killers, to mass killers. Come in here. This is a zone where nobody other than you is going to have any means to defend themselves. I believe, too, if I'm not mistaken, Senator Rand Paul has introduced a companion bill to yours in the Senate.
Yes, he has. And, you know, instead of having our kids in that 98% vulnerable category, why don't we put them in the 2% category? Why don't we put signs out front instead of saying gun-free zone? Why don't we put a sign out front that says, if you come in here and start shooting our students, we're going to shoot you, and you don't know which ones of us are armed. That's going to be the most effective deterrent.
Right.
And by the way, people ask, some of the liberals are saying, well, what if this happens? What if a teacher lets a student get their gun? What if a policeman shows up and accidentally shoots a teacher? All these hypothetical scenarios are ignoring the fact there are a lot of schools already where you can carry a gun. In fact, in Kentucky and Pike County, they just voted, the school board did, to let their teachers carry a gun. And then private schools already allow this in Kentucky. Some of them do. I talked to a parent, and he said, you know, when I drop my kid off at school and I see the sign on the door that says our teachers are armed, he says, I know I'm not going to have to worry about her.
Right. I mean, it makes sense. Or look at Jewish schools, for example. There's so many anti-Semitic hate crimes in our country that many private Jewish schools are heavily armed. And where are those hate crimes not committed? At those schools here. Sir, what is the appetite in Congress right now? I know sitting here outside the Beltway, and I think this sentiment is shared by a lot of the American people, or at least those who support the Second Amendment. We worry that the appetite of Congress to protect our Second Amendment is not there. We worry that Congress will cave to the pressure, cave to the liberal talking points. What can you tell us about, I guess, how committed your colleagues in the House and then your counterparts in the Senate are to protecting our right to bear arms?
You know, some of the Republicans here are like those deputy sheriffs in Florida. They're afraid to go in. They're afraid to take fire. And so they're standing outside watching this gun debate happen. And the casualties and the Bill of Rights are racking up. We're going to lose due process. We're going to lose the Second Amendment if somebody doesn't go in and confront the liberals. And so that's why I'm taking it head on with legislation, H.R. 34, H.R. 5112. But some of my colleagues need a little bit of encouragement there from back home, because I think they're starting to forget what they came here for.
Right, and I guess right now that's a cue for my viewers to ask who those people are and what they can do. You can write in, you can call in, you can tell those people to make sure that they remember what they're there for, and that is to protect our constitutional rights, including our Second Amendment right to bear arms. Congressman Massie, thank you for being on the forefront of this fight. I appreciate it. My viewers appreciate it. It was a pleasure talking to you today, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Liz.